Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining, and I appreciate folks already muting themselves. It's very considerate of you. Welcome to our online symposium here at the Baltimore Jewelry Center. I'm Shane Prada. I'm the director here. It's so lovely to have all of you here with us on Zoom. This is our 7th annual symposium, and it's our 3rd online symposium. It's really fantastic to have over so many guests with us from the States, but also from around the world, or at least in Europe at the moment. Our jewelry community is vast, and it's really special to be all together today. Before we get started, we do ask that everybody remain muted. While muted, you can use the chat. You can drop questions, exclamations, comments, anything you want to share in the chat. We will have a time where folks can come off the chat to ask questions, but it just helps everyone to hear better when we have everyone muted. You can utilize speaker view to get the best viewing experience. And as a reminder, we're going to have time for questions at the end. I'm joined today by my wonderful colleagues, Mercury Swift, Elliot Keeley, Allison Gulick, and Jay Diamond. They have been working so hard to bring this event together, our online symposium today and our event tomorrow, which is in person. As I said, this is our 7th annual symposium and the 3rd one that we're doing an online portion for. We've really enjoyed hosting the speaker portion of our symposium online because it allows so many people to join us from anywhere. If you don't already know about us at the BJC, we're a nonprofit arts education space in Baltimore, Maryland. We offer classes, workshops, and studio rental for both new artists and established artists. And we host exhibitions, free workshops, and educational events to reach more people. We have a robust residency program, a kids and teens program, and a workforce development program. We're going to drop the link to our website now so that you can check it out. And I did want to mention that right now I am in our gallery, and the exhibition that we have on view right now, Location Services, features one of our speakers, Demitra Thomloudis, who's with us today. So you get a little sneak peek. This show will be up through into November, so come check it out if you're local. So as I said, it's our 7th symposium. We developed the idea for an annual symposium in 2017 after we were a host of a Radical Jewelry Makeover, which is a year-long jewelry repurposing project. We wanted to host a day of making and learning that was accessible to jewelers and makers and those who'd never made jewelry. So we hosted a symposium in 2017 in conjunction with Radical Jewelry Makeover. And since then, we've just done it every year. We organize the day around a broader theme, and that way we're able to highlight the ubiquity of jewelry and make new connections with people outside of the metals and jewelry field. Our theme this year is This Must Be the Place. Through the symposium, we'll explore the complexities of place and how artists and makers utilize place, both the direct artifacts of locations and spaces, as well as the memory and imagination that places and spaces can refer to. Today, we're going to hear from 4 speakers whose academic or artistic work utilizes specific references to place. And then tomorrow in person, we're going to be hosting a series of free workshops and demos that relate to the symposium theme. There's still time to sign up and drop by if you are local, so join us. There's 2 sessions tomorrow from 10 to 1 and from 1 to 4. And then this entire event culminates with a charge to artists who we asked to participate in our community challenge, which artists will then create jewelry and objects that evoke a sense of place, and they'll be able to show that work in our gallery. I'll talk more about that at the very end, so you can learn more then. Yeah, so I just want to say again, a really big thank you to my team here at the BJC, Elliot, Allison, Mercury, and Jay. I've worked really hard over the past several weeks to develop this program and deliver it to you online. And even Jen Moore, who's on this call, who is a recent former employee, was working hard at this the earlier part of the year. Our interns and our residents have also helped prepare for tomorrow's in-person session. Everything we do here, we couldn't do with all the wonderful support that we have on our team. And I want to thank you to our BJC board. They help facilitate the funding that makes programs like this possible. The Wingate Foundation and the Maryland State Arts Council and our amazing donors give us the funding that allow us to host this. I also just want to thank our 4 presenters for being with us today and sharing their research and their smart minds. I'm really excited to hear from them, and I hope you are too. So without further ado, we'll get started. For the format today, we have 4 presentations. There'll be a brief time for questions after each presentation, and then there'll be time at the very end for a bit of discussion and Q&A with all 4 presenters. So first up, we have Demitra Thomloudis, who's actually joining us here in the studio. She's in our forming room. She came to install Location Services, the exhibition I mentioned earlier, and was here for the opening last night. So it's special to have her here in person. Demi is a studio jeweler, an associate professor, and the chair of the jewelry and metalwork area at the Lamar Dodd School of Art at the University of Georgia. Her investigation of the human body and its relationship to jewelry has manifested in works of art that challenge our assumptions about jewelry and its meaning, power, and value. Her research, inspired by architecture and space, explores jewelry's capacity to express the interrelationship of person and place, which has earned her an international reputation in the field, as well as numerous accolades and invitations to participate in exhibitions and residencies. These include the Museum of Arts and Design in New York, the Benaki Museum in Athens, Greece, Museum for Modern Art in Arnhem, Netherlands, the Hellenic Museum in Melbourne, Australia, and the Franz Mayer Museum in Mexico City. Her work can be found in numerous private collections and permanently at the Museum of Art and Design, Museum Espace Solidor in France, and the Ilias Lalaounis Jewelry Museum in Athens, Greece, and at the Georgia Museum of Art. I didn't know that. Her work is represented by Charon Kransen Arts and the Penland Gallery located at the Penland School of Crafts. I actually just recently got these earrings from the Penland Gallery, and they are made by Demi. So as Demi presents, just remember that you can drop questions and comments in the chat, and then we'll have a time to discuss those before the next presentation. I'll turn it over to you, Demi.
Okay, great. Everyone can hear me all right? All right, so all right, perfect. Great, well, hi everyone. I'm absolutely thrilled to be speaking with you today. Many thanks to all the BJC staff and instructors and residents and members for making me feel so welcome here this week while I've been installing the exhibition. So thanks for everything. So before I get started, I just wanted to tell you where I'm coming from, or where I live most of the time. I am at the BJC right now, but I live in Athens, Georgia, and I teach at the University of Georgia. Athens is about an hour away from Atlanta. And some of the things that you might recognize Athens for are things like REM, the B-52s, and of course, football. It's a big football day today, go Dogs. But anyway, so that's just like a little background of where I'm from right now. And so I was thinking, before I get started talking about my work in location services, exhibition, I wanted to first give all of you some background of my previous work. My jewelry practice has been influenced by the languages of architecture and landscape and site-specific locations that I have visited, encountered, or called home. Talking about my work today, I'll use the terms site and place interchangeably, as I feel they're inherently they coexist in and around one another as they reference appointed space and points of occurrence. Having moved around the US quite a bit in the last 10 years, inspiration shifts and redefines itself. But I'm continually fascinated with how our bodies move through our surrounding environments. And perhaps within the format of jewelry, I can reverse these roles between body and site. Now, instead of our bodies inhabiting space, aspects of these sites can now exist on the body as ornament, as we see in these two necklaces. But jewelry is obviously no stranger to these ideas. This is a micro mosaic necklace, which would have been acquired as a souvenir or as a keepsake in the 18th century. Each segment of this necklace depicts characteristics of place, thus symbolically becoming a placeholder for the experience. Embodied in this object is the encounter with the site, which becomes a link to identity, which in turn is perceived with value. Theories and psychology surrounding the idea of place identity has also been a consistent thread in my work. Harold Prashansky was an environmental psychologist and centered much of his research around the idea of place identity theory. He describes place as one's relation to the physical environment by means of a conscious and unconscious ideas. Here in these brooches from the Viento Block series, jewelry acts as a material extension of place. These brooches were created in response to the landscape and architecture of the Borderplex region of El Paso, Texas. These works, such as these, become mobile vestiges rooted in place and contains aspects connected to personal narrative through the context of site. The experiences associated with site and its presence within adornment can go beyond the individual whom the experience belongs to or the maker, and has the ability to transcend and reach others to create new meaning. Dr. Shelley Hornstein, professor of architectural history and visual culture at York University in Canada, explores the intersection of memory and place via architectural and urban sites. Dr. Hornstein instigates how architecture shapes our experience of place as it both captures and conjures memory. So talking about site, oh wait, I want this to play. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. Talking about site, this project definitely connects to that and is a project that we showed here at the BJC, I think in 2016, if I have that right. But this project reflects my time in the Chihuahuan Desert region in 2015, and it was a collaborative project between myself and Motoko Furuhashi, who is a professor at New Mexico State University. The project was inspired by site-specific locations in the region and our physical experience at these sites as resident and visitor. The project identified 9 sites on the I-10 highway between Texas and New Mexico and used Motoko and I's shared experiences with each site to inspire the creation of jewelry and objects. The title of Cross Paths embodies the spirit of the project and breaks down to reference both the city of Las Cruces, Mexico, the city of crosses, and El Paso, Texas, which translates directly to the past in Spanish. This is an excerpt from a catalog that we created for the exhibition. This is showing site number 7. And so all of the work in the project was created collaboratively and physically, merging ideas from one another in each jewelry piece. And so now, instead of our bodies inhabiting space, aspects of these sites can now exist on the body and embody fragments connected to the experience and place that we shared together. More information on this project can be found on my website, demidemi.net, under the tab Cross Paths. So leading up to the work in location services, this series proposed excavation was created in 2017 and 2018. I've always been fascinated with the built environment, its materials and methods, its execution, and I've documented in and around these sites in progress for many years. This documentation becomes part of my studio library, and I use this as reference throughout the making process. I take cues from my observations and explore these references and ideas through material and form, creating my own systems and making my own connections. So I can't take all the credit for the documentation that I do on site because I do get a little help. My husband is a building inspector, and so we nerd out on this stuff quite often. And I get sent pictures from job sites that he's on all the time. You can follow him and what he does every day on his Instagram handle if that's something that you're also interested in. So from my observation, I create rules which I follow or allow myself to break. The tension and relationship working in, out, and in between these systems is where all of my interests lie. And so these are a couple exhibition images from an exhibition that I also had here at the BJC in 2020, which I think only like 5 people saw in person before the world shut down. But it was great to have it here. Along with these systems and organization, this body of work is entangled by architectural markings found on site. Evidence of the body left on structures and landscape as spray painted language where color and mark give direction, order, and significance. The color palette used in this work is reflective of the color designations for another set of systems which lie above and underneath: gas, oil, water, sewers, cable, etc. The clash of these systems and their reorganization reveals itself as ornament and becomes an artifact of sight and a snapshot of an experience. Irregularity allows for the essence of these systems to transcend beyond location and build off of the body. So I just want to pause here 1 second to talk about these 2 artists that are really influential to me. Julie Marfetu is a painter based in New York City who's very interested in architecture and its organization. Her work utilizes many layers and fragments of visual information taken from architectural references, urban graffiti, and colloquial language. Julie Marfetu is also influential in my work in regards to approaches of layering and fragmentation, and the way that I embrace an intuitive way of making and responding to materials and space. Russell Maltz, on the other hand, is a sculptural artist whose projects often utilize stacked and painted commercial building materials to establish formal and physical relationships with existing architectures, focusing on issues of scale, density, documentation, and systematic progression. These 2 artists are very influential to me, and I think are a reflection in some of the things that I do for sure. So now I'm going to talk about the exhibition here at BJC and my work within the exhibition and also my collaborators. Location Services is a collaborative effort between myself, Carrie-Ann Quick, and Motoko Furuhashi. The precursor to Location Services spurred from a lecture that Carrie-Ann, Motoko, and I gave at the College Arts Association conference in 2018. Our talk was entitled Crafted Insights, Perspectives on Inspiration, Location, and History. Location Services first opened at the Craft in America Center in LA last year and presents perspectives on place through a lens of contemporary jewelry and objects. Together, we all share a common interest in site, place, and origin, and together we construct a holistic view through crafted responses, which are unequivocally individual. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Carrie and Motoko's work in the show. Motoko was born in Tokyo, Japan. Her work has been inspired by her experiences traveling around the world and roads that take her to one place or another. She received her MFA from the University of Illinois in Champaign-Urbana. Currently, she teaches at New Mexico State University. Motoko's work in the exhibition uses direct experiences to capture the physical and non-physical memories of selected locations. By collecting material directly from the site and creating through performative actions, Motoko claims the site as an extension of her studio. Motoko's collection of surfaces are applied to jewelry, bringing the site directly to the wearer's body. Carrie-Ann Quick is a Southern Californian craftsperson and associate professor of jewelry and metalwork at San Diego State University. Carrie-Ann received her degrees of Bachelor of Arts in Applied Design from SDSU, her Master's of Fine Arts in Metal from the University of Illinois Champaign-Urbana, and worked as a research assistant to Dutch designer Gijs Bakker in Amsterdam. Carrie-Ann focuses on material origins, histories, and supply chain information to bring the wearer viewer an expanded perspective, connecting to the history of jewelry as objects of remembrance. The work reminds us that history is present even if it is unseen. So the work in the exhibition that I'm contributing is entitled The In Between and Over, and is an extension from the talk from the College Arts Association conference, and is related to the work from the proposed excavation series. This work isolates aspects of positive and negative spaces found in architectures. The observations have led me to create an index of stock materials to work from, in the same way that, you know, the building community has its own set of stock materials. I render vector paths which are in response to photographic research, and these vectors are then creating languages comprised of form and repetition. These works are cut out using the water jet cutting process. And these stock materials are then used to form the work in the exhibition. And so having a large amount of this material is really important to the process. So this material at my disposal, I'm here physically observing and manipulating systems and order, and at the same time allowing myself to interrupt those patterns to create new systems. I'm taking information that is monumental in scope, but for the purposes of scale shifts that dramatically introduce this information into an intimate space, asking the viewer to look closely in, out, and in between. The scale shift also presents these materials and formal languages as precious. Within the chaos, one tries to make sense of the movement created by directional changes. The movement within this work becomes directly decorative or distinctly decorative in nature as ornament reveals itself. Color here becomes more of a resting point for the viewer, which is in contrast to the previous work. When I'm working, I'm constantly observing my fabrication and construction with the body in mind. The body is always considered. The relationship to the body is essential. The work builds and extends off of the body and is quite demanding. It's a collaboration of sorts. I ask the viewer to perhaps reinvent their world to accommodate this work. And without color, we can hone in on the intersections and interruptions. All of this work is powder coated. Powder coating is based on a polymer resin system that is applied through electrostatic spray deposition. This application method uses a spray gun, which applies an electrostatic charge to the powder particles, which are then attracted to a ground part and then cured in an oven. So this is an industrial process. So again, kind of like building on using information and materials from the built environment. To connect back to my inspirations related to the built environment, I use raw materials often in my work to display my work. I've sort of always shown my work in this way. These planks are cut out on the CNC machine and become placeholders for the body, setting the brooches at various heights for different people. Again, the body is always present. This is an image from my website, and one of my favorite things about this work is that from every angle, the piece changes and the view is totally different. So to conclude, I'm just going to say one thing about something that's coming up during New York City Jewelry Week. I'll be showing some new work at New York City Jewelry Week in the exhibition, A History of Revolutions, which is presented by the Ilias Lalaounis Jewelry Museum in Athens, Greece. The exhibition is going to open on November 15th at the Consulate General of Greece in New York City. And I hope if you're there that I'll see you there. So thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Demi. Yeah, I've already got a comment and a question. Katya Toporsky says that she can't wait to see the show. And she asked, how do you see the difference in experience of those larger sites and the intimate scale of jewelry? Is there anything lost in translation, or is there anything gained?
Well, I think it's just a matter of a different perspective, you know. So I've always been interested in how our bodies are consumed by these spaces and consumed by this language. And really what I'm trying to do is reverse those roles and to understand these spaces that we are in, and have those spaces have a different kind of coexistence on the body instead of our bodies being within them. And so I don't know if it's really, I think it's just a difference of perspective.
Yeah, I mean, just experiencing the work right behind me, how you made the comment of how you hang the work at different heights. So different, height, people can be introduced to it in a different way.
Mm-hmm.
I know in your practice, you've experimented with a lot of different materials. Are there any materials that you're eager to try out eventually?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not so much a material at the moment, but a process. And so I'm getting a new laser welder so that I can kind of mimic welding marks that would be apparent on steel structures that are welded together, but kind of bringing that down into the scale and making that an apparent aesthetic position within the work. And that's something that I'm really I'm going to be working on really soon, and I'm really excited about.
I wanted to ask about these earrings. Is this what is this material?
So that's a rubber shrink rubber tubing. Yeah,
it's so firm. I wasn't sure.
Yeah, so it's all your cables and cords and all that stuff are coated in that stuff. Cool. Yeah, it's really fun. It's super fun.
Jay Diamond said, I'm noticing a lot of brooches in this series, and I'm curious if and how you view the relationship between clothing and jewelry in this work, since clothing often serves as an intermediary or scaffolding between jewelry and the body.
Oh, good question. Well, I mean, like I was saying in the presentation, the work is the body is the site for the work to build from. And so thinking about this idea of building and architecture and the way that things sort of come together and intrude or inhabit space is sort of where I'm coming from. And so the brooch to me seems the most effective position for that, because also the wearer then is in collaboration of where that lives also on the body. And so I think that's sort of how I'm positioning it in that way.
That's a good point. I never really thought about, like, yeah, your earrings are going to go on your ears, pendant's probably going to land here, but a brooch can really move around the place of the body. Carrie said, interested in the color coding system. When placed on the body, the work that uses that system might project the system to the body. Do you think of it that way? Is it important that the viewer or the wearer knows the code?
So that's a good question also. I feel like the code is sort of there's like a standardized code, right, that happens within architecture. And I think it's potentially recognizable. And if it is, fantastic, because what I'm trying to do is sort of challenge the recognition of that and create these new systems. I guess, I mean, if your question is pointing to, does it matter if people sort of understand the architectural kind of inspiration? I think it's perhaps inherent to the aesthetics of the designs. I think whether you know it's a particular like site or building or something like that, I think is not really that important to me for this work.
Got it. Mary Fazell says, traditionally jewelry is precious or has concentrated value. How do you think about industrial materials and value? It's really interesting.
Yeah. So I think that the material in tandem with the design of the work creates that value. So I think this complication of form language and material create interest, which I think, and then kind of bringing that into a scale that is associated with jewelry kind of gets you to that idea of value, right? And so whether or not the material itself is going to do that, I'm not sure. I think it is definitely a collaboration with the design of the pieces as well.
Is that a topic that you might discuss with Mike, with your husband, about like the value of materials that he's encountering? Because I mean, I'm just thinking about like recently, just like the huge shift in cost of material production for building, you know?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's crazy expensive to build anything right now. And so it's a different kind of expense though. You know, like when you see these materials sort of like individually, like the plank of wood that I used in the gallery, it's like I don't think people like approach that as, I don't think many people approach that as value in the same way that we approach a piece of jewelry as having value. Like they're kind of two different like sets of value. But the value of that piece of wood is like 5 times more than it was a few years ago, right? And so there is these like shifts in value that just happen naturally, right? Yeah.
Cool. All right, if there are no further questions, again, there'll be more time at the end to circle back. Thank you so much, Demi.
Great.
Thanks
Thank
for being our
you.
first speaker.